I'm Jess. I'm 29 years old, and last Friday night, I found out that my entire family threw a retirement party for my mom, a full-blown catered event with twinkly lights, speeches, and a multi-tiered cake shaped like a cruise ship. And they didn't invite me. Not a, "Hey, you coming?" Not a paper invite that got lost in the mail. Nothing. I found out the same way everyone finds out everything nowadays, through someone else's Instagram story. My cousin Trina, bless her heart, posted a boomerang of mom raising a glass, tiara on her head, with the caption, "Cheers to the most amazing woman I know." Hashtag retirement queen, hashtag family goals. Family goals, huh? I stared at the screen for a solid minute, phone resting against the steering wheel while I sat in the Target parking lot, frozen yogurt melting in the cup holder next to me. The video looped, my mom smiling, surrounded by all four of my siblings, uncles, cousins, even Aunt Denise, who once faked a fall to sue her own neighbor. And there she was, front row. But not me. And here's the thing, I'm not estranged. Not officially. We talk, if you can call the occasional obligatory birthday text and awkward Christmas Zooms talking. Sure, I moved across the country after college and didn't look back. And yeah, maybe I skipped a few Thanksgivings because I didn't feel like flying 5 hours to be asked why I'm still single by people who married their high school sweethearts and never left the Tri-County area. But I still sent flowers on Mother's Day. I still sent a card when Dad passed, even if it was just signed Jess. I even called last year when her dog died. She didn't answer, but I called. So no, I wasn't expecting a parade. But not even a text. I didn't move for a while. Just sat there watching the digital confetti rain down in real time on my mom's retirement slideshow. Every now and then the screen would freeze on a smiling photo of her at her desk, captioned with "She gave 35 years to the city. Tonight, we give back to her." Cool. Guess I missed the giving. And the more I thought about it, the more it started to burn. Because this wasn't the first time something like this happened. There was the time they all went to Cabo for Mike's 40th and told me after they got back, said it was spur of the moment. Spur of the moment my foot, those souvenir t-shirts were custom printed. Or the year I found out mom had surgery, actual, real surgery, and no one told me until she was already home and recovering. "Didn't want you to worry," she said. Right. Because nothing says, "we care," like keeping your daughter in the dark about a major medical event. So this party? It wasn't just a party. It was the latest chapter in a very long book titled, Jess, Optional. I wasn't always the outsider. At least I don't think I was. When I was a kid, I was the middle child with big glasses and a bigger imagination, always staging dance routines in the living room and turning bath towels into superhero capes. I made birthday cards out of cereal boxes and tried to make people laugh even when I was the only one who thought the joke was funny. But I think somewhere around my senior year of high school, things started to shift. I didn't want to go to state college like my siblings. I didn't want to work at the family real estate firm or settle down in the same zip code. I wanted, I don't know, something else. Something different. That different quickly turned into difficult in family terms. By the time I packed my car and drove to Seattle with 2 suitcases and a cat named Pickle, I think they'd already decided I was just doing it for attention. So yeah, I guess I shouldn't have been shocked. But I was. Shocked, then embarrassed, then quietly devastated in that way you get when you realize, no matter how many times you tell yourself you're over it, you still want to be invited. Even if you'd say no, you just want the chance. I drove home in silence. Didn't touch the froyo. Pickle greeted me like she always does, weaving between my ankles like I was the most important person in the world. It's a low bar, I know, but at least she's consistent. Later that night, I poured a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and rewatched Trina's story. Frame by frame. There was mom holding court like the queen bee, giving a speech into a gold-rimmed microphone. She was smiling, eyes wet, saying something about how blessed she was to be surrounded by family. Everyone raised a glass. My sister was even crying. That's when the tears hit me. Not loud, ugly ones. Just the quiet kind that slide down your face when you're not even sure why you're crying anymore. Then, I did something that surprised even me. I took out my phone, opened Google Maps, and typed in the venue name. 9 hours away. 1 road trip. 1 awkward, overdue confrontation. 1 shot to make them see me. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and whispered to no one in particular. Not the next morning, I woke up still wearing last night's hoodie, the taste of Merlot and resentment still hanging around like the smell of reheated takeout. I told myself it didn't matter. Told myself I was being dramatic, that showing up uninvited to a party that already happened wouldn't change anything. I even went as far as tossing my keys into the fruit bowl like, see? I'm mature. I'm not doing this. But then I called Danny. Now, Danny is the kind of friend you call when you're either about to make a questionable life decision or need help making it more dramatic. We met working at a bookstore 5 years ago, bonded over a mutual hatred of overpriced journals and customers who ask if we have anything like Harry Potter, but not fantasy. I hadn't even finished explaining before she said, so we're going, right? I blinked. Jess, she said, like my name was a scolding. You got left out. Again. And you're just gonna let them act like you don't exist? Nah. No way. We're going. I mean. I was thinking about it. But no but. I'll make the playlist. Road trip rules. You pick snacks, I pick vibes. That's how I found myself, 4 hours later, with 2 iced coffees, 3 types of trail mix, and 1 very determined Danny in the passenger seat. Her sunglasses were already on, and she had the audacity to say, "Put on your war face, Jess. We're going to crash a kingdom. 9 hours to Mom's town. 9 hours to overthinking every memory." By hour 2, we'd burned through a solid chunk of the playlist, everything from 2000s emo to angry girl pop, and the energy started to shift. I guess being trapped in a moving vehicle with your thoughts does that to you. We drove through the foothills of Oregon, passing sleepy towns and billboards advertising alpaca farms and Jesus. Danny was napping, which gave me space to mentally wander into the darker corners I usually avoid. The ones where I remember my mom brushing my hair while humming Patsy Cline, or how I used to watch her from the stairs when she'd host book club, smiling, confident, glowing. She wasn't a bad mom. Not exactly. She was just selective with her affection. The kind of woman who could make you feel like the center of the universe or like a pothole in her driveway, depending on her mood. And she always had a way of making me feel like I had something to prove. I think that's why this party hit so hard. Because no matter how far I'd come, part of me still wanted her to say, "I'm proud of you." Not for a degree or a job title, but for surviving. For being the kid who didn't fold under the weight of being the family disappointment. By the time we hit hour 5, Danny stirred and said, "All right. So what's the plan when we get there?" I hadn't really thought that far. I guess I walk in, say what I need to say, leave before someone throws a crab puff at me. She snorted. "You're not starting a bar fight, Jess. This is your closure arc. You're the underdog protagonist. You walk in, deliver your monologue, drop the mic, emotionally, not literally, and walk out with your dignity intact. Right. Because my life is totally a Hallmark movie. More like a limited series on Netflix," she said. Mid-budget. Strong emotional arc female lead who finally chooses herself. I laughed, but something about that stuck. What if this wasn't just a petty drive-by? What if it was the first time I really stood up for myself? We rolled into town around 7:30 p.m. The sun was low, casting that golden, warm glow that makes everything look a little more magical than it really is. Like it's trying to trick you into nostalgia. The venue, this old winery-turned-event space, was tucked at the edge of town, with ivy-covered walls and an iron gate that screamed, "No riffraff allowed." Which, let's be honest, meant me. I parked around the side, out of view, heart already doing the nervous drumroll thing in my chest. Danny turned to me, serious now. "You sure about this?" "No, not even a little." But I nodded. "Yeah, I need to do this. For me." She gave my hand a squeeze. "You've got this, Jess. Say what they never let you say." I stepped out of the car, smoothed down my wrinkled jeans, and looked up at the soft lights still glowing through the windows. Most of the guests had probably gone by now. Just family lingering, clinging to the last free wine pours and stale cupcakes. Exactly the people I needed to see. I took a deep breath and walked toward the door. Wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. That would have made things too easy to walk away from. Instead, it creaked open like a horror movie set, the kind where the villain isn't a ghost, just someone who shares your last name. The room smelled like old wine and expensive candles. I stepped in quietly, like I didn't want to startle the moment, but my entrance still pulled heads like a magnet. First one cousin saw me, then Aunt Denise, then Trina, who froze mid-sip and lowered her champagne like it had betrayed her. And then my mom turned around. She was sitting at a long table near the front, silver hairstyled perfectly, still wearing the tiara from earlier, like the queen of someone else's fairy tale. She looked surprised, not shocked, not horrified, just surprised, like she'd forgotten I existed and suddenly remembered mid-sentence. "Jess," she said, blinking slowly. I gave a small wave. Hey, Mom. The room went quiet. Like pin drop quiet. No clinking glasses, no polite murmurs, just 20 or so relatives watching what felt like the opening scene of a courtroom drama. I didn't wait for permission. I walked to the front, where there was still a mic on a little stand from earlier. No one stopped me. Not because they didn't want to, but because no one knew what to do with me. Mind if I say a few words? I asked, not to Mom, but to the room. No one answered. I took that as a yes. The mic gave a small screech of feedback as I adjusted it, which felt metaphorically accurate. I cleared my throat. I wasn't invited to this party. I think we all know that. And for a while, I thought about staying away. About letting this be one more thing I wasn't part of. One more photo album I didn't make it into. I looked at my mom then, who was holding her glass like it might shield her. But then I realized, maybe I didn't come here for you. Maybe I came for me. Someone coughed. Trina was already texting under the table. Classic. I spent a lot of years thinking that if I just tried harder, called more, visited more, fit into whatever version of a daughter you needed, I'd finally feel like I belonged in this family. That I'd stop being the complicated one, the overly sensitive one, the one who moved away and made different choices. I heard a fork clink quietly, someone shifting uncomfortably. But I've come to understand something. You don't stop being family because you disappoint people, and you don't earn love by shrinking yourself. I took a breath. I was shaking a little, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. Truth. I'm not here to ruin your party, or to make some dramatic scene, although, let's be honest, I've already nailed that part. A few nervous chuckles. Mostly from the people who weren't immediate family. I came because I've spent too long pretending I'm okay with being invisible. And I'm not. Not anymore. I looked right at my mom again. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between defense and disbelief. You raised me to be strong, to speak my mind. And I'm doing that now. I deserve to be here, whether you believe that or not. Silence again. Then, from the back, Uncle Ray muttered, "Well, I'll be damned. Thanks for the moral support, Ray." I looked around one last time, then gave the mic a soft tap and said, "That's all." No applause. No standing ovation. Just stunned faces and wine glasses frozen midair. I turned and walked toward the exit, each step feeling a little lighter than the last. As I reached the door, I heard someone behind me say, "Jess, wait." I stopped, slowly turned. It was my mom. She stood now, tiara still perched, but the smile gone. Her voice was steady, but quiet. "You think we don't love you?" I shrugged. "I think you don't see me. And there's a difference." Her jaw clenched, the way it always did when she didn't have a good comeback but didn't want to lose face. "You didn't have to make a scene." "No," I said. "But apparently, I had to crash your party just to get a conversation." I pushed the door open and walked out. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel like the one left behind. I didn't cry in the car. Which, let me tell you, is a new personal record. Usually, I'm the type who tears up watching a Subaru commercial if the music swells just right. But not this time. Danny didn't say anything when I got in the car. She just handed me a granola bar and started the engine like we'd just wrapped a heist and were heading for the border. Bless her. "I can't believe you actually did it," she said, as wide as we pulled away from the venue. "You seriously walked up, took the mic, and gave them a full monologue. That was, like, Oscar level." I snorted. "Yeah, well, I think they hated it. Doesn't matter. That was your moment, not theirs." I wanted to believe that. Really, I did. But somewhere between the adrenaline crash and the memory of my mom's face, tight-lipped, cold, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't fixed anything. I just lit a match in a room full of paper hearts. Back at the hotel, I showered, changed into sweatpants, and stared at the ceiling like I was waiting for lightning to strike. Instead, I got a text from my little brother, Sam. Just 3 words. I saw everything. My heart stopped for a second. Sam's the youngest. Quiet. Always towing the line between keeping the peace and fading into the background. He didn't say much growing up, but when he did, it mattered. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the screen before I replied. "Are you mad?" 3 dots. Then, "I'm proud." That broke me. Not in a sad way. And I needed someone to say that so badly it hurt kind of way. Another message followed. "They've treated you like you didn't count for years. You just finally said it out loud." I sat on the bed in the quiet, phone glowing in my hand, and for the first time since walking into that party, I let myself breathe. And then my mom called. I didn't pick up. She called again. I stared at the screen, heartbeat speeding up, thumb hovering between accept and decline like I was choosing my own adventure. Finally, I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. Of course she didn't. The next day, Danny and I packed up to leave. We stopped for breakfast at this sleepy little diner with cracked leather booths and coffee that could strip paint. I was halfway through a short stack when a voice behind me said, "Mind if I join?" I turned around. It was my cousin Amelia, the one who always sat out of family drama like Switzerland with a good skincare routine. She slid into the booth without waiting for an answer. "I know I probably shouldn't say this," she began, then paused, "but you were right." I blinked. About what? About all of it. They treat you like an outsider because it's easier than dealing with their own mess. You being the difficult one lets everyone else pretend they're the good guys. That landed hard. I looked down at my pancakes. I didn't do it to stir the pot. "I know," she said, but the pot needed stirring. We talked for 20 minutes. About how she'd always noticed the way people talked around me. How my mom once referred to me as her wild card, like I was some cautionary tale rather than her child. Family isn't supposed to feel like a performance, she said. You made it real again, even if they hate you for it. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to say that until I felt tears prick behind my eyes. Back on the road later, I finally checked my phone again. A group text had lit up like fireworks. Family chat, 23 unread messages. And there it was. The fallout. Mike, she always has to make everything about her. Rachel, this is exactly why she wasn't invited. Uncle Dave, it's sad, really. Just clearly needs help. Then Sam again. Or maybe she finally helped herself. No one responded to him. I didn't reply either. I didn't need to, because the message had already been delivered, loud and clear. For once, they were the ones scrambling to explain, to justify, to spin the story. And me? I was finally off that hamster wheel. As we crossed the state line back into Oregon, Danny turned down the radio and said, "So, what now?" I looked out the window, watching the trees blur by like pages turning. "Now," I said. "Now I start living like I don't need their permission to be whole." She smiled. That sounds like freedom. And for the first time in a long, long time, I actually believed. The voicemail came 2 days later. It was short, clipped, a little shaky. "Jess, it's your mother. I suppose I owe you something. Call me when you can." Not exactly a warm hug in audio form, but it was more than I expected. My thumb hovered over the call button for a full minute before I shoved my phone face down on the table like it had insulted me. "Are you going to call her back?" Danny asked, watching me over a mug of tea like it was popcorn. "I don't know. You do." She wasn't wrong. That night, I walked around my apartment like it had answers. Fed pickle, folded laundry, alphabetized my spice rack. Anything but face the fact that my mom finally wanted to talk. And I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. But sometime around midnight, I gave in. I called. She answered on the second ring. "Jess." "Hi." Long pause. Then she said it. "I didn't think you'd actually do it. Show up, I mean. I didn't think you'd actually throw a retirement party and leave me out," I said, not cruel, just honest. Another pause. Then a sigh that sounded like she'd been holding it for a decade. "I didn't know what to say to you anymore. You could have started with, 'I miss you.'" She didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, she said, "It was easier when you weren't around." That sounds awful, but it's true. You never fit. You were always loud. Complicated. Different. Yes. There it was. My life in one word. A label sewn into every interaction we'd ever had. "You know what's funny?" I said, leaning back in my chair. "I spent years trying to be less of all those things. Thought if I could just blend in, you'd let me back in. But now I see. Maybe I never left. Maybe you just never saw me." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I saw you. I just didn't know what to do with you." That broke something open. Because it wasn't an apology. It wasn't even enough. But it was honest. And my mom doesn't do honest. "I wasn't trying to humiliate you," I said. "I just wanted someone, anyone, to acknowledge I exist." "You did," she said. Loud and clear. Another silence, but this one felt different. Not empty. Just full of things we didn't know how to say. "I don't hate you," she added quietly. "Cool," I said. "I don't need you to like me anymore." We hung up not long after that. No resolution. No tearful promises. Just two people, broken in different directions, finally looking at each other without pretending. I didn't cry. Instead, I sat in the dark with Pickle purring on my lap and felt lighter. The next day, Amelia sent me a message. Mom told me what happened. I think you shook something loose. People are talking. Some of them in a good way. Later that week, I got a postcard in the mail. From Sam. You changed everything, you know. People are scared of truth tellers. Keep telling it anyway. S. I stuck it on the fridge next to a cartoon pickle magnet. That weekend, I had a few people over. Not a party, just the kind of hangout where everyone kicks off their shoes and nobody asks when you're getting married. Danny brought wine. My neighbor brought cookies. Amelia even came by, said she needed to borrow some rebellion. For the first time in years, my place felt warm. Real. Late that night, after everyone left and the dishes were piled high, Danny flopped onto the couch and said, "So, was it worth it?" And I thought about that. About the silence. The speech. The fallout. The way the room had looked at me like I'd broken a rule they weren't brave enough to question. Yeah, I said. It was. Because sometimes you don't get apologies. Or clean endings. Or perfect healing. Sometimes you get a crack in the wall. And that's enough to let the light. It's been 3 weeks since the party. 3 weeks since I stood in front of my family and reminded them I exist. Since I gave that speech with shaking hands and walked out without looking back. And no, everything didn't magically fix itself. My mom didn't turn into June Cleaver overnight. My brother Mike is still avoiding me like I'm a debt collector. Rachel posted something vague and passive-aggressive about some people making scenes for attention and got a flood of heart reacts from extended cousins I haven't seen since Y2K. But you know what? I'm okay with that. Because the world didn't end. The ground didn't swallow me up. In fact, once the dust settled, the only thing left standing was me. And that's the most powerful thing I've ever felt. I've started sleeping better, eating better, laughing more. My apartment, which used to feel like a waiting room for a life I hadn't earned yet, suddenly feels like home. Real, lived in, and unapologetically mine. Pickle's thrilled, by the way. She's finally figured out how to open the cabinet where I keep her treats. We're in negotiations. Sam and I talk more now. Nothing deep. We're not cracking each other's trauma open over brunch, but it's different. He sends me memes. We joke about family politics. He told me he might come visit this fall. Just him. No drama. The other day, I got a letter from my mom. An actual letter. It was short. Neat cursive, blue ink. No apologies, but a few phrases that carried more weight than anything she said out loud. You were right. I didn't know how to love you the way you needed. I don't understand your choices, but I want to. I miss you, Jess. I read it twice, then tucked it into the back of my journal. Not because I'm holding on to hope, but because some things deserve to be remembered, even if they don't lead anywhere. Closure doesn't always look like a hug. Sometimes it looks like a full breath in a quiet room, no weight on your chest. Last weekend, I hosted my first dinner with my chosen family. Just a little backyard thing, string lights, cheap wine, grilled veggies, a playlist that swung wildly between Etta James and Lizzo. Danny was there, of course, barefoot and loud. My neighbors came. Sam showed up via FaceTime with his dog wearing sunglasses. Amelia brought her husband, who wore a Support Your Local Black Sheep shirt just for me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was standing outside the window, looking in. I was in it. The laughter, the stories, the life. No approval needed. No boxes to check. Just me, fully, messily, joyfully me. As the night wound down and everyone drifted out, I stood in the kitchen with a glass of wine, staring out the window. It was quiet, peaceful. Danny wandered in, already in her pajamas, holding 2 mismatched mugs of tea. She handed me one and leaned against the counter. You know they're still talking, right? I raised an eyebrow. Of course they are. You care? I took a sip. Let the question settle. No, not anymore. She smiled. Proud of you. And this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't deflect or downplay it. I just nodded and smiled back. Because I'm proud of me, too. Proud that I showed up. Proud that I spoke up. Proud that I stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing myself. Turns out, sometimes the best seat at the table is the one you build yourself. And if nobody offers you an invitation, well, you show up anyway.